Hello, Starseeds and Magical Friends, and welcome to the next episode of the Truth, Beauty, Freedom, and Love Show, the show where we share stories of inspiration, truth, love, and the magic that exists within our reality. My guest for today's show is Pamela. I'm gonna let her do her whole introduction and the multifaceted being that she is today. We have many topics that we could probably talk about. But today's show is going to be primarily focused on I call it future ancient stories and myth, not exclusive to like Greek Roman myth, but of course, any of the stories that provide, I guess, sacred stories in our reality that provide intel into who we are as human beings and souls on this planet. So thank you so much, Pamela, for joining me on this show where we share stories. How are you doing? And please do give a quick, well, it doesn't have to be a quick introduction, however long you feel your introduction should be. Please do say hello to everybody and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rachel. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Oh my goodness. I don't even know how to do an introduction with like all of these themes, like the truth, beauty, freedom, love.
Let it come to you.
I am Reverend Dr. Pamela Hancock.
Yes.
I grew up in Southern California, in a bad part of Southern California. I grew up in San Bernardino, but I grew up in the shadow of a very magical mountain that is the indigenous land of the Uhavi people. And if you've ever seen Arrowhead water, which is stolen from this mountain, mind you, it has this beautiful arrowhead on it, and that arrowhead is actually pointing at hot springs that the indigenous peoples believed that arrowhead, which is made of solid quartz, and it's like hundreds of feet tall, was placed there by the gods to show them where magical waters are. So I believe my personal history is woven into the history of this mountain that I now live upon. I live in Crestline, California.
Okay.
And I think that one of the major aspects of who I am is based in the fact that, much like you, I was raised in a Christian environment where I felt that my personal freedom was kind of often jeopardized because even as a child, I knew myself to be a witch. And so I really fought often against the oppressors of the school that I found myself in.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to tag that.
As a result of that, this like constant fight to be who I really am showed up at the forefront of my education. And so I ended up going and getting my bachelor's degree at University of Redlands Johnston Center, which is a hippie school. So
nothing wrong with that.
Right, it is a school where you don't get grades, you get evaluations, and you pretty much design your own degree.
Wow.
So I ended up triple majoring in museum studies and history and creative writing.
Of course, triple. Why not?
Of course, it's fun. So I had like 3 senior projects and did a lot of crazy stuff.
I love that.
Ended up working for a historical society after that. But my passion throughout all of that and woven into that degree was me like constantly studying religion and spirituality and myth. Like took courses on all of the Buddhist stories. I took a course on all of the Celtic stories. I took a course on all of the Greco-Roman stories. And it was that wanting to help people really click into the archetypal truths that are woven into all of those myths that ended up being what propelled me to then go to Star King School for the Ministry, which is a multi-religious seminary in Oakland, which was originally in Berkeley.
Interesting.
Because my intent when I started at school was to be a prison chaplain, because I really wanted to be able to help people kind of continue to pursue their own truths, even when incarcerated, and really wanted to kind of infiltrate the Western Prison Industrial Complex and do all that I could do to help. But unfortunately, in California, they don't hire interfaith chaplains, which is what I was being trained to be.
Really?
Really, because all of the major faith traditions have lobbied. They have lobbyists.
Now we're getting into a whole like industry of religion. Fun.
To only have people who are in the top 5 religions. So you can be Catholic or Christian, because those are considered different.
Interesting.
Jewish, Muslim. Luckily, there was a Native American representative, but I mean, I'm not an Indigenous elder, so there's no way that I could show up in that way.
Yeah.
So at the end of my degree, upon finding this out,
when did you find that? Like, it's just like, as like at the end, like, okay, I'm about to do it. I'm like, and by the way, you have to be part of these recognized, registered institutions for us to recognize your relationship with something spiritual.
Correct. And yeah, I found that out because I was an intern at San Quentin, which is like one of the major, huge prisons. My supervisor, who was Catholic, was like, "So what's the plan after school?" And I said, "Well, I would love to work here." And he's like, "Oh, you can't." And it was that point where I found out. Like I was not told that along my whole educational adventure until that point. So I did a quick pivot because I thought, okay, Spirit, Divine is trying to tell me something. What are they trying to tell me? So at the core of everything that I was doing was really this archetypal piece.
Yeah. Yes.
And I had started.
Quick note here. Archetype is a very, I feel like, loaded word. So how would you define archetype in your context? Yeah.
Define archetype as the patterns that are ingrained or woven into the all that is. So as in patterns such as everything that is alive on 2 or 4 feet or flying or swimming has a mother. And so mother is an archetype.
That's a good way to describe it.
We all have children. We all have, but in the midst of that, there are also like patterns in the way that we show up. So another archetype is initiation. So
yes.
There are these, Jung describes them as the channels in ancient riverbeds through which water can always run.
I always love the poetic way of describing it.
He's amazing.
I love that. I got chills when you just said that. That's a good way to describe it.
I'm going to read his description. I'm like, this isn't useful. Like, it gives you chills, right? So in kind of feeling like that was my main purpose in showing up in the world, was like kind of holding up this archetypal mirror to folks. I thought, you know what, I'm just going to get my PhD. That way I can teach.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting my PhD in depth psychology with a focus in Jungian and archetypal studies.
Very cool.
After which I was asked to kind of help reimagine what the chaplaincy program at the school that I went to should look like, considering the fact that it was not working in the way that it was working when I went there. So I ended up I'm the director of the chaplaincy program at Star King School for the Ministry. But as things started to unfold and psychedelics had their quote unquote renaissance.
That's right.
There was this push towards having the opportunity of kind of weaving that into the ways that our ministry and chaplaincy students are showing up in the world. And we had a class with Aize Everett called The Sacred and the Substance. That was about the history of psychedelics. And it was at that point where they're like, oh, we should do a program on this. So we also have a certificate in psychedelic justice and companioning.
Yes. Yeah. I will have a link for that for anyone who's interested in that, because I think there's a lot in there. In that program, though, do you focus when it comes to justice with psychedelics, like what does that entail?
Yes, yes. So that is kind of twofold. It is policy and decriminalization and all of those aspects.
Yes.
So we have a class that's specifically on policy and decrim, but it's also about like, you know, not stealing indigenous wisdom from people. It's about making sure that BIPOC folks have a voice. It's all of that woven into it as well. So it's not just like a bunch of stuffy old white guys saying, "Oh, you should do these drugs." It's about like understanding where they came from, and making a space for all voices to be heard.
Oh, yes, yes, yeah. That's a big part of it, because stories are how certain mysteries, certain intel is passed along from generation to generation. And I think a big thing is like in the history of everything, right? The victors tell the stories, right? And oftentimes when I read comic books, people ask like the villain and the hero is depending on who's telling the story and who gets to control that narrative. And I think when you're talking about psychedelics, it's also just like there are groups of individuals, people, and our ancestors who have used these tools, these magical substances in very sacred ways for like millennia. And there are so many stories behind them. A lot of the rituals and mysteries are theater, if we think about it, right? Theater is incredibly psychedelic, and the arts and Shakespeare and all of that is all just ways of us encoding it. And so I do think that when you're talking about this, so the school that you teach at, can you tell me a little bit more about that, like how it started and how you found it even?
So Star King School for the Ministry is a Unitarian Universalist seminary that has been around for over 100 years, and started out specifically educating people going into UU ministry to be at the pulpit. And Unitarian Universalists are incredibly dedicated to counter oppression and things of that nature. So because of that fact, they attracted a lot of faculty who were multi-religious. And so when I started looking, what happened was I had gone through this priestess training because I mentioned I'm a witch, but I'm also a pagan priestess.
Of course.
Of course. I
kind of got that vibe, right? Like off the first moment, I'm like.
So I was sitting down, and I was, to be quite honest, really pissed off that Catholic priests and all of these people could live these lives in devotion to who they consider divine, which, you know, and that is part of their story, and that is perfectly fine with me. But I didn't think that it was fair as a pagan woman who is in a lineage, being of Celtic descent, of these Celtic traditions where there were goddesses like Bridget, as we know her, that there were these women who were flame keepers, who had these fire temples where people would like go and like
Hestia,
traveling across the country, like they would have a safe place to sleep and they would be given food. And Bridget is like the goddess of hearth and home and creativity and healing.
Oh, she's awesome.
And
I love her.
I was like, why can't I have a place for that? And so one of the major reasons why I was searching for a seminary was like, how do I get a degree where I will be considered valid?
Right? Oh, wow. Like, that's a very powerful statement. Yeah.
How can I show up in the world as a religious leader? And the only way, like, it doesn't matter that I've been initiated into like a priestess tradition, like Joe Schmo off the street's not going to care about that. But me saying, I have a master's of divinity, blah, 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 is that thing.
I look at that as like the cosmic game of life, and the way that there's been certain hijacks on the main game, right? So things like licenses or certificates or these things that don't necessarily have any backing behind them, it dilutes the meaning behind what those things are, right? Like the work that has gone into like getting a bachelor's degree or all these kinds of things. Like when people, like, let's say you can buy a license or you forge something, or like just because you know how to write a test, does that mean that you actually know the material, right? So when you said something really, I love your word of like multi-religious. Like I haven't actually heard that word before. I'm like, wow. I'm like, of course you can be multi-religious. Like,
right. Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that really attracted me to the school at the time were these, like, it was almost like Hogwarts. Like it was this
yes,
magical land,
wizard school.
Right, wizard school with all of these different traditions being represented there. And so there were people, like, for instance, there's a near dear, he was one of my mentors. He's actually passed now, but Ibrahim Baba, who was this, just, so if you can imagine Dumbledore, like the height and stature of Dumbledore, but as this like massive, full of love, glowing, queer black man who was Muslim and Jewish and Sufi, and like he just showed up with all of these traditions, like just flowing through his body, and just it gives me chills to think about it, because he was just this magnificent being that just
was exactly who he's supposed to be. Yeah. And
so like he was one of the professors there at the time. My boss now is Dean Gabriella Latini, and she is from a small Catholic sect in Italy that is like considered by some to be witchcraft. Like just like all of these really interesting, like really grounded in understanding and living these principles. Humans were there, and so I went and I said, I want to show up in the world as a priestess because that's who I am. And they went, great, come to our school. So
I love that.
Right.
So bringing it back to your Christian roots, because you and I actually share that. We have that in common, like this, like that Christian backing. And I think also a lot of times when I've done things on lives, like read cards, I do get some pushback from Christians, saying like, it's demonic and why are you playing with cards and blah, 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 all that stuff. So I know how to deal with it now, but what was your Christian tradition growing up? Because they are all different, right? And it's interesting how much there's infighting, even though you're working from apparently the same book. So so it just so like Roman Catholic versus Anglican versus Protestant versus Methodist versus like like born again Christian, and you maybe like these books but not others. So what was your background in terms of all of that?
So my actual like family lineage background is Christian Scientist. And
Interesting.
Christian Science was started by Mary Baker Eddy in the late 1800s in Boston when the spiritualist movement was really gaining momentum. And so there was this like clash between Christianity and these, especially women who felt like there was some other power that like was encoded into the Bible that was like on the down low, right? And so Mary Baker Eddy started her own religion, which I mean later becomes a publishing company. Like the Christian Science Monitor is this huge like
interesting. Yeah, I'm making a note of that.
Yes.
Because publishing, right? And even the fact that I think the Catholic Church owns this huge like telescope.
Right. Yes, they do.
Yeah. Something like that.
Right. So she was trying to blend a very Eastern, like these Eastern concepts of like being able to heal yourself and with Christianity. And for me, it didn't work. Like as a child, like because within the context of this religion, there's the Bible, but then there's this text called "The Key to the Scriptures" by Mary Baker Eddy, and so it's her like
interpretation of
the Bible, and in her interpretation, evil doesn't exist.
Oh, that's problematic.
Really bad. Like, how do you can't swear that's real. You can't. Like, in the Bible, like, that's one of the major pieces, is like the fight against God and the devil, right?
Yeah.
Or God and whatever other warring tribe of the Jews, like, when we won't even go into the discrepancies between the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Forever.
Yes.
But she was like, evil's not real and sickness isn't real, and you can pray yourself to be not sick by not believing that it's real. And so Jim Henson, the Muppets.
Oh yeah.
He was a Christian Scientist, and that's one of the reasons why he didn't seek medical attention when he was sick. Was because he believed this, like, I don't believe that I'm sick, so I'm not sick.
It's so crazy you bring up Jim Henson, because on YouTube there's this show called The Storyteller, and it's by Jim Henson. Are you familiar with that show? And it basically goes through all of these old like fairy tales, and then he does like a whole series on Greek myths, yes. Right? Yes. And it has like a puppet dog, and like it's yes. It's and I'm like, oh my goodness. So actually that's a great segue into what I wanted to talk about, like some of the more Greek and Roman myths and versions of it, because today is, hold on, I want to speak about it. There's a meteor shower today. There's a peak of it. It's called the Lyrids.
Right.
The Lyrids. And the Lyrids come, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, I think it's the tail of Halley's Comet, isn't it? Like, that's part of what those are?
Possibly. The what my understanding of the Lyrids are is that they're, I don't know if they're from the constellation Lyris or they're related to that constellation, but regardless, that constellation, the Lyris, is the lyre, right? If you think of the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, right. Hopefully I'm saying her name right. Is it Eurydice?
Eurydice.
Oh my gosh, I can't. Say it again.
Eurydice.
Eurydice.
Yes.
Eurydice. Okay. I'm going to just avoid saying her name until I can forget it properly, but I'll call her Orpheus's Lady Love. So that story is a tragedy, right? Like it's a heart-wrenching tragedy, and the story of the constellation itself is this idea that after Orpheus's, spoiler alert, Orpheus does not get his lady love out of the underworld, even though he petitions Persephone and Hades, and because he looks back, and the moral of that stupid story is that never look back when you're not. I don't believe that that's the final story of what Orpheus is about, but I'll put that there. So after this happens, Orpheus is distraught, so he makes a whole bunch of like noise and music. Like he's like, I'm never going to do music again, and all of the Bacchanals of like Dionysus are like, you can't be doing this. Like, why are you? The way that Jim Henson does it in that show, he says like, the sound could make women barren, and so the women came and then like tore Orpheus limb from limb, and Zeus had pity on the whole thing and sent an eagle to take the lyre and go up into the sky, so that the lyre and the eagle are both immortalized in the sky. So that's the story of that whole thing. And like, it's just interesting because of a meteor shower, and we have all these constellations up there with these stories encoded in a lot of those images, right? And so I've also heard an alternate telling of the tale of Orpheus where he actually does Eurydice does yeah she actually makes it out.
Yes.
And it's a happy ending.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on all these different stories and like the versions of them? And to me, I feel like it's like even comic books, you have different versions of these different characters, like Batman, and depending on what like reality you're calibrated to, it's going to have a meaning that's meant for you in this story. So the story of Orpheus is like, Orpheus is supposed to be like the musician. The lyre is something that Mercury is actually created and gives to Apollo after he steals his like cows or something like that. But
Right.
but those are all like just stories, and like one can say, like when I look at Jesus's parables as well, it's about looking at, it's a fable, it's a story. There, as a teacher, the story in the way that that person is telling it is trying to give you some sort of like information about whether it's morality or like how you can better live your life or like all that kind of stuff. So
Right.
what are your thoughts on that myth? And like
Cool. Well, I personally haven't spent much time with Orpheus because I don't know, that whole like man going to save a woman thing has never been really much interest to me. However, I have really gotten deep into many myths because weirdly, and I don't think you know this, my dissertation when I was going to Pacifica to get my like essentially Jungian psychology PhD, I created a system called mythic mapping, which is essentially bringing together storytelling, active imagination, and like game design. Because I actually created like a board game and like a spinner and a set of oracle cards.
Are you kidding right now? Oh my gosh, my friend. You should be playing Dungeons and Dragons.
So what's weird is I never played RPG.
But you do, but we are in a big RPG. Right? That's the thing.
Absolutely, 100%. And previous boyfriends, etc., played like all kinds of RPGs. So I like was totally exposed to it. And also understood.
You also look like an elfin princess, by the way. Like that vibe. You know what I mean? Like in RPG, where like the elfins with like you always need a magic user on the team, right? So
so yeah, I created this system so that people can literally click into their own interpretations of myths.
I love that.
And then play that role to go on adventures to different islands of their internal archetypes. So their child, their shadow, their wise elder, and yeah, I got
literally. I'm fangirling right now, Pamela. I love that you did that. That's so amazing. Like it's
the myths that I explore for people to kind of like dive into themselves were the myths of Persephone.
Oh yes, I love Persephone a lot. Actually, she's such a. It's like that whole duality of being like, you know, the daughter and the maiden, but then also being that like that woman in power, like queen of the underworld. Yeah, it's a big thing, and this whole idea that Hades loves her.
Yeah, like totally loves her.
So
yeah, have you read the comic book that's about them?
No, actually, I haven't. I haven't read that one specifically. So okay, it's on the list. It's on the list.
Anyway, so I dive into Persephone, I dive into Medusa, who's actually the goddess that I identify with the most. I did the Ariadne myth, which is the one about the labyrinth of the Minotaur. Then, because I wanted it to be cross-cultural, I do the like origin of Kali, like coming from the head of Durga to fight this demon. We also do a Yoruban myth that is about betrayal. So, which has like Oshun.
Oh yes, Oshun. I know. Yes. Yeah.
And there was one more. What's the other one? Wait.
Because there's a lot of equivalencies in a lot of the goddess myth too, right? And
yeah. The book version.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love that.
But so I go into all of these, like, what story do you identify with? And then from that, so I give people the opportunity to utilize the myths that I explain. Or if there is and I think you'll identify with this, if there is a myth you carry. So if there is a story that you have always identified with, it's like digging in and figuring out why.
Yeah.
So to answer your question earlier, I think that the reason why there are all these different interpretations, why there are always all these different versions of these ancient stories, is because the only way for us to kind of show up in these mythic realms of like truly embodying who we are is if we then identify with a particular myth and live that myth onward.
That was I'm glad we got that live, because that was very well put, because that's basically it, right? This idea of the way I like to put it is this, like, because I took theater and drama growing up, and if you were to like write a script, like a small script, and you cast yourself as a character in that script, you cast your friends, and then you're acting now on stage, in that scene, in that moment, I'm going to, because I'm the character, I'm not going to know I'm going to be surprised. I won't know what's happening next, even though I wrote it, right? And it's just like, but in that time when I'm on the stage at that moment as that character, you don't know that. And so that's a bit of like, I think what psychedelics actually help people with, um, understanding that duality of like, I am everything, I am the stage, I am like the script, I'm all of it, but I'm also me.
Right.
And that's also important too, to be you, and to act in character to what you are meant to do, so that the whole story can progress. And a lot of things are dependent on others as well. And I think that's a big thing with like we were always like, I'm working on myself and my own like world and like your self-care, and I'm like, yes, but there's also like the relationship aspect of it, and like what roles as like a sister or as a daughter or as like a wife or whoever, or a teacher, the roles that you're playing for other people, and know that even though you're a supporting role in that is a very important role to fulfill. And it's, I think, just the duality of that. And so like I love like that game, because that's how people learn, right? It's opposed to like, I'm going to show you my PowerPoint presentation and this is the model of reality, and like this is what happens, you go from point A to point B. And if it was quite as that simple, it probably wouldn't be fun either.
No, absolutely not. Right. And all of those myths are interwoven as well. It's not like in the so, and you even mentioned it, like there is Persephone and Orpheus is his own story, but he interacts with her, but she's her own story. And
yes.
And that's exactly how any mythos that's based in a pantheon has all of these main characters, right? Like Zeus would probably call himself.
Zeus.
Zeus. It's, in fact, quick shout out to the TV show Chaos, because if you're interested in watching Jeff Goldblum play Zeus.
Oh yeah.
It's like the best. They didn't renew it, and I was sobbing. So Orpheus is one of the main characters in it.
I will watch it. It's so funny you mentioned Jeff Goldblum, because I watched a movie the other day. It's an old movie. It's called Buckaroo. Oh my gosh. Buckaroo Banzai, and like the eighth dimension, and Jeff Goldblum's in that, and it's like a crew of people. That movie's so fun.
Yes.
Because
just funny, if not more so, as Zeus.
So, I can see.
Yeah, I mean, so all of these characters are their own main characters, just like we are all our own main characters, and yet we do have a responsibility to the interconnectedness of the other main characters in our myth. We all have to engage with one another, much like Gaia herself is. At her, Earth shows up in every pantheon.
That's true.
And yet we're totally messing her up on the regular.
Oh my goodness. That Gaia, I think the Gaia Sophia Earth Mother Great Goddess story, I think that is what I will have us do our next show on specifically.
Ooh.
Yeah, and then maybe we can do like all the different like maybe Gaia Earth myths and maybe
Oh,
interface that, do a little fun game with that because I do feel like there's a big ramp up right now at like an attack environmentally, like at least in Canada there's some stuff. I'm sure anywhere there's natural resources, this is a fight for like, our birthright of like being earthlings on this planet. And she's counting on us.
yes, exactly.
She's counting on us to
Yep.
figure things out and like correct some stuff. And so I think that's what we can focus on next time. I have 1 minute left on this show. It went by so fast. I wanted to do this for an hour, but next time I'll hopefully have you on my Discord channel. So everyone out there, please do join us on Discord. I had a little bit of, oh no questions, or just comments. They liked our conversation just about the different stories. So we will bring that. I will bring Pamela on again. I will maybe do this also on TikTok as well. But before we wrap, is there any links where people can find you?
So Rev Pamela Dawn, REVPAMELADAWN, like the time of day.
Perfect.
.com is my website. You can see links to the school that I work at, and I'm actually opening up this place called the Sacred Path Sanctuary, where I'm going to be doing workshops and rituals, connecting people to their myths. So you're going to need to come down from Canada.
Oh, I would love to do that. And we can do some cosplay in character as goddess